The vast, emerald expanse of the Congo Basin held little solace for Serafina. She was a lioness of immense stature and fierce copper-colored eyes, but her spirit was a landscape of ash. Weeks earlier, a sudden, merciless fever had claimed her only cub. Cato, the emptiness she carried was a crushing weight, one that made the sun seem dimmer and the calls of the wild sound mocking. She had abandoned her pride, unable to bear the hollow sympathy in the eyes of the other females or the dominant male's pragmatic expectation that she would simply breed again. Serafina was driven now by a restless sorrow, hunting only to survive, drifting further toward the dense, uncharted edges of her territory where the grasslands gave way to the deep, shadow-choked forest. It was on one of these aimless treks deep within the humid, overgrown labyrinth of the rainforest that the scent of distress reached her. It was sharp, a mix of primate panic and fresh tragedies, overlaid with the metallic temps of blood. Her instincts, dormant since Keto's passing, flared to life, not with hunger, but with the cold, detached curiosity of a solitary survivor. She padded silently through the undergrowth until she found the scene, a small, decimated gorilla troop. It was clear a leopard had struck, swiftly and brutally. Among the silent bodies, two tiny, frightened figures stirred. Huddled beneath the massive, shielding hand of their fallen mother were two infant mountain gorillas. One, a male, was slightly larger and bolder, his tiny chest heaving with silent sobs. She named him Titus. The other, a female, was smaller, trembling uncontrollably and clutching tightly to her brother's fur. Serafina instinctively thought of her as Juno, the hidden one, protected by shadows. They were impossibly small, their dark eyes wide pools of terror reflecting the giant, golden predator looming over them. They did not attempt to flee. They simply froze, awaiting the inevitable fate that nature dictated. For a long moment that stretched into an eternity, Serafina stared. The hunger in her belly was real, a constant gnawing reminder of her wild nature. But as she watched the sheer, absolute helplessness in their dark, glassy eyes, something broke within the dam of her grief. They were the same size as Keto had been when he died. The sound of Titus's small, pathetic whimper was almost identical to the sounds her own cub used to make when he was cold. The primal urge to protect, to lick, to soothe the very instinct she thought had died with Keto surged back, overwhelming her predatory drive. It was illogical, biologically senseless, but the need to care for these two vulnerable, orphaned creatures eclipsed everything. Serafina lowered her enormous head slowly, nudging the earth gently. The gorillas remained still, paralyzed. She made a soft, rumbling noise, a low maternal purr she hadn't used in weeks, a sound designed to calm a cub. Titus flinched, but Juno only buried her face deeper. Serafina lay down, her vast, powerful body, creating an immediate shield against the outside world. She licked Titus's forehead, the rasp of her tongue startling him into a brief, terrified scream, which was quickly muffled by her coarse mane. It wasn't an act of calculated adoption. It was a surrender to an overpowering biological reflex, a desperate attempt to fill the gaping void in her soul. She had found something, however unlikely, to spend her broken heart on. The first few days were agonizing. Seraphin's milk had long since dried, and she was confronted by the staggering difference between caring for a lion cub and two baby primates. Gorillas needed foliage, soft berries and tender shoots, things she wouldn't touch. They needed warmth and frequent small meals. She relied entirely on the rudimentary, innate knowledge the infants possessed. She would drag them to open clearings where ripe fruits had fallen, and they would immediately recognize the edible from the poisonous, stuffing their mouths with the sticky sweetness of wild figs and soft mangoes. Serafina watched, a vigilant shadow, her body always positioned to intercept any threat. Moving was a challenge. Titus and Juno couldn't keep pace with a hunting lioness. Serafina learned to walk in slow, careful strides, always keeping them close. She would often carry Juno draped across her back, the small gorilla gripping the thick fur of her shoulders, while Juno, Titus, ever the more adventurous, would scramble to hold onto her tail or cling to the scruff of her neck. When they slept tucked firmly against her warm, massive flank, surrounded by the powerful, musky scent of their unusual mother. They learned quickly to distinguish her movements. A slow, soft rumble meant rest. A sudden flick of her ear meant silence and danger. deep, resonating call that only she could make meant that they were safe. The pride's reaction, when Seraphina occasionally ventured to the fringes of her old territory, was swift and absolute. Leon, the dominant male, spotted her first. Ash. His challenging roar was laced with bewilderment and contempt. He saw the two strange, dark-furred creatures clinging to his lioness and reacted with savage disdain. This was an abomination, a weakness that compromised the pride's integrity. He drove her away with a fury that Seraphina did not fight. She knew she could not defend her unusual children against her own kind. She accepted her exile, the dense jungle becoming their refuge and their fortress. One humid afternoon, their fragile peace was shattered. A sleek, powerful leopard named Shaka had been tracking Seraphina, drawn by the unusual scent combination. He moved with silent malice, spotting the gorilla's first day an easy meal, separated from the protective cover of the trees. He launched himself from a low branch, aiming for Juno. But Seraphina was faster. With a terrifying roar that shook the damp leaves from the trees, she was on him. It was a desperate, chaotic fight of tooth and claw. The lioness fighting with a ferocity born not of territory or pride, but of profound protective love. Shaka, stunned by the sheer power of her rage, retreated, leaving Seraphina bruised and bloodied, but victorious. As the forest fell silent, Titus and Juno emerged from where they had instinctively hidden in the roots of a giant fig tree. They did not approach their mother with the fear they had first shown. Instead, they moved with a deep, settled familiarity. Titus gently brushed his hand against the wound on her shoulder, his eyes displaying a sorrowful wisdom far beyond his months. Juno began to groom the thick fur around Seraphine's neck, a small, soothing gesture. In that moment, the bond was solidified, tested by fire and found unbreakable. Their family unit became a legend whispered through the jungle. The local baboons would watch from the canopy with chattering disbelief. The forest elephants would cautiously give them a wide berth. Seraphina the hunter would bring down a young antelope or warthog, ensuring she ate well to maintain her strength, but she never forced the gorillas to partake. They, in turn, led her to the richest patches of wild celery and bamboo, which they enjoyed in quiet companionship. They taught her the jungle's quiet paths and safe sleeping spots under dense protective foliage. She taught them the meaning of absolute protection. Titus grew into a stocky, cautious toddler, never straying far, and Juno became a playful, nimble climber, using Seraphine's tail as a permanent climbing rope. Years passed. The two gorillas, still small but rapidly approaching the age where they would traditionally join their own kind, were a constant testament to the resilience of a maternal heart. Seraphina had found her purpose not in replacing what she had lost, but in nurturing the unexpected. On cool evenings, the three would rest together on a sun-warmed granite outcrop. Seraphina would lie, her head resting on her paws, while Titus and Juno would sit side by side, occasionally patting her muzzle with gentle hands. They were a bizarre, beautiful anomaly, the lioness and her gorilla Sunza family, defined not by blood or species, but by the fierce, unyielding shelter of the lion's heart.